Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We're looking at a pretty fun Tuesday night slate here, y'all. In this one, we are taking a look at the Charlotte Hornets taking on the Toronto Raptors in Toronto. A couple guys out there questionable. We'll take a look at some of that stuff. Make sure you are staying on top of who is in and out of those lineups all the way up until tip. And Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com right now, so make sure you check that out with some best bets and player props. And like and subscribe to that page. We've got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video. Looking to stay hot 4-0 last night to start the week, so feeling good about that. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Raptors are right now minus 3.5 at home, and that total is creeping up from 221 to 223, both moving in favor of what I would recommend. So I definitely like that line movement. We will talk about why we like the Hornets and the under in that game, but there are several other intriguing games to consider here on a big Tuesday night, starting with Nuggets minus 7.5 at Pistons. The Clippers are +4 at the Wizards. Pelicans +8.5 on a back-to-back in Philadelphia. The Lakers are -2 at Brooklyn. It'll be just James Harden and his backup dancers in that one. Kings +8.5 at the Celtics. I still don't know why any team would be getting that many points in Boston. Spurs -4.5 at Rockets. The Mavs are +3 at the Warriors. We're going to break that one down in a separate episode. And then the Wolves -3 at the Blazers. Total all the way up at 230 for that one. The Hornets, I was kind of listing off some stats for Josh, to his utter surprise, have turned into a defensive team. You know, after giving up the most and scoring the most points per game over the first few months of the season, they haven't even slowed down the pace. They've just become a much better defense. They've gone under in 12 of their last 15, and were only underdogs in one of those games that they went over. So now 13-10 to the under when underdogs. Their defensive rating is just 106 in that span. They're scoring allowing just 103 points per game over their last 9 while winning 7 of those games. Their only losses are in division against Orlando, continues to surprise occasionally, and Atlanta in their last time out. And the key there, Gordon Hayward was out against Atlanta. Only the second time all season they played without Gordo, and they dropped just 91 points. So now they average 96 points per game without Gordo, who's questionable tonight, again, with that foot injury. I would caution against reading too much into that small sample size. The team went 4 for 36 from deep. LaMelo, Miles Bridges, and Terry Rozier combined to go 0 for 18 from deep. That's just not the kind of trend you're going to see continue. That's a ridiculous outlier. They still won the rebounding battle against Atlanta in that game. They're still getting the most fast break points per game over their last 3. Still 7th in offensive efficiency on the road. And they've got our guy PJ Washington, who can step in along with Kelly Oubre to really give the Raptors some matchup problems here, I think, because of the athleticism of those guys on the wing. That's actually who you need to match up with OG and Pascal Siakam. So more minutes for those guys is not necessarily a negative, in my opinion. It is a positive if you're looking at an under, which for Toronto has been hitting like crazy. 7 of their last 8. They just barely went over with Portland, in a 3-point shootout with Portland, where they accounted for 51% of their points off threes. But Toronto, while losing 5 of the last 7, is dead last in pace, by far the worst true shooting in the league, 28th offensive rating, not getting those fast break points that they depend on so much, not shooting well from deep. And Charlotte, along with that defensive turnaround, is allowing the most 3-point attempts, but the 6th lowest percentage over their last 9 games. Kind of the Milwaukee Bucks blueprint, right, of we'll let you shoot threes, but we're going to make sure the right guys shoot threes. So the key for me is that Fred VanVleet has never really had a big game against Charlotte. In 11 meetings, his career high is 17 points. He averages just 10.5 points per game with under 2 triples. And then you look at his prop, it's minus 165 that he'll hit under 4.5 threes. So the odds makers definitely don't expect him to go off. And Toronto basically doesn't win if he doesn't go off. He averages 3.5 points per game fewer. In losses, they haven't won a game without him all year. And he hits about 4.5 triples when they win. So if FFFDD isn't getting his, then I don't really think Toronto's going to win this game at home.
Yeah, it's a telling stat. A lot of this stuff just came out of nowhere, to be honest. Shame on me for not realizing all of these sort of defensive turnarounds for both of these teams. Before I looked at the total of this game, I was certain it was like 234, 235, and it's at 221. And yet we still feel good about those unders based on everything you said, right? And a huge part of that is obviously Charlotte stepping it up on defense to the tune of the third best defensive rating over their last 8, similar to what you were saying. And then, you talk about Toronto. Their defense hasn't necessarily been that great in that same time span, but their offense sure has been terrible to aid those 7 unders in their last 8 games. But both of these teams in the bottom 5 in offensive rating in their last 8 games in the league. It's wild to me. Seeing Charlotte or seeing Toronto have 8 in a row, or 7 of their last 8 go under. Charlotte almost same percentage of those still going under. Both of these teams are hovering around 500 when it comes to this spread in terms of these situations where, you've got Charlotte as an away dog and Toronto as a home favorite. There's not much there for me to go on to say, oh, okay, well, this is the edge one way or the other. But I do like the fact that I think, I don't think Toronto's 4 points better than Charlotte right now. Even if Gordo doesn't play, you mentioned how far their offensive rating drops in this small sample size of him not playing. I'm not necessarily worried about Charlotte's ability to cover a spread because Gordo's not playing and their offense is hurt because of how well their defense is playing. If this was a game where I thought they needed 120 points to win, I'd feel a lot more, a little bit more worried about taking Charlotte to cover 4 points. But to be honest, this is another one for me where I like this game a lot. I've been, loving Charlotte all season. And Toronto's been a nice surprise when Fred VanVleet is playing well, but they're relying on him too much. I mean, he's probably an all-star starter. Maybe not, he's not going to get the nod because, the fan vote matters so much. But I think if the media was just picking picking this straight up, it would be pretty much between Fred VanVleet. Maybe you consider Harden, maybe you consider Darius Garland, but I don't think there's much out there that's better than him at point this year. Obviously Harden probably going to get that vote because of the fan vote. But my point is, that he's played well enough this season to keep this team, where they're at. And if he's not able to carry them on offense with that usage rate up where it's been in their wins, especially up around 35%, then, I don't feel as good about them being able to cover. So I would take a little tease here and not stress about it too much and maybe just get Charlotte up to about 7.5, 8 points and feel really, really good about that. And then go ahead and just take the under there because I feel great about the under at 221. So if I get it at 225, I feel even better.
Yeah, you could tease it. I mean, I feel like this is kind of a miscast line at the moment. I think Charlotte should be favored, but you're getting so much value because of their outlier game last time out. So if you just actually take the money line and that under without moving it, you're getting plus 330 on Charlotte there. I would also just consider taking the Raptors team total under 111.5, considering, again, Charlotte's given up 103 their last 8 and Toronto scoring 100 their last 8 games. So these lines just seem really miscast based on the early season reputation. Also, Toronto, they've done really well in these kind of rivalry games, 7-3 against the spread in division. They're slightly below 500 out of the division. They're below 500 on normal rest. And the Hornets, as long as you give them a day of rest, 20-10 straight up and against the spread, whereas they're 0-8 against the spread when they are on a back-to-back there. They're also just, I like PJ Washington. I like Miles Bridges. I just like their demeanor when they're underdogs. I think they give this team an edge. And PJ has not played very much this season, but him being back has a lot to do with this defensive turnaround. I think he's, the key to their communication on the defensive end, and he's really good matchup, again, to keep Pascal Siakam out of the paint. The Raptors are struggling to score when they can't score in transition. If they're not getting the right guys open from 3, again, they don't score. And there's not a reliable mid-range game for them anywhere on the floor. So I like the Hornets defense to be able to pull this one out for them. And I think there's a variety of ways to bet that.
Yeah, and there's a reason, that Charlotte has had the success they've had against Toronto as of late. And it's a lot to do with what you just said. Charlotte and what they do well is especially on defense as of late, is exactly what Toronto wants to do. And they're scoring, as we know, still trying to get out and go. It's why Fred VanVleet has had 27 points or more in his last 4 home appearances. But I think what trumps that, this is entirely what you said. The bevy of guards and athletic guards and wings and long guys that can bother Fred VanVleet switch all over the place for Charlotte as they finally started to play like a team that is playing as versatile on defense as they've been on offense, as they're guarding everything everywhere. You look at what they do well on defense, it's pretty much, top 15, top 10 in various different categories. They're in 3-point defense. We know they've been really good at that lately. And then points in the paint, defending that there as well. So yeah, I think it's going to cause a bunch of problems for Toronto tonight. Feeling good about the under. To your point, I mean, they've also won their last 4 as underdogs, have Charlotte. So, straight up. So I don't know why you wouldn't feel good about the parlay, or the money line parlay with that under as well. As you said, you can get a ton of value from Charlotte tonight. So a lot to like in this one. And that is all the time we have for you. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. You can check out those other couple videos we've got for you today, including that player props video, looking to stay hot on a 4-0 start to the week. So until we see you next, happy betting.